A legendary Democratic strategist faced off with and ultimately humiliated MAGA Fox News host Sean Hannity on his own show with a series of brutal and hilarious fact checks. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, as we know, Sean Hannity is Donald Trump's top ally at Fox News. It's basically a de facto senior advisor to Donald Trump and has been for years. But I will say this about Sean Hannity. He will occasionally have tough conversations with ideologically opposed people. Most famously, of course, is California Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom, who in 2022 or 2023 also humiliated Sean Hannity. It doesn't happen all the time. Hannity usually doesn't have these conversations, but he is more likely to than, say, Laura Ingraham or even Jesse Waters. So he has on James Carville. James Carville was a strategist for the Clinton campaign. He was the one who coined the phrase, "It's the economy, stupid." He's also known as the Raging Cajun because he likes to drop F-bombs and profanity. And listen, Carville's opinions are a mixed bag as far as I'm concerned. He has some takes I disagree with, some I do agree with. But it's funny to watch him in real time humiliate a Fox News host on Fox News' home turf. So we're going to play these clips and unpack them together, and hopefully you enjoy them as much as I do.
Hasn't happened since. Now your party is against tens of billions spent abroad for Green New Deal, DEI, woke agenda, and transgenderism. What happened?
Well, we got to get that $100 million for condoms for Hamas because that's where all the savings are. I haven't seen.
Cute answer. There's tens and hundreds of billions.
American for.
So again, just real quick, that's Hannity bringing up this idea that the Democratic Party is profligate, but the fact of the matter is, compared to the Republicans, they're not. Hannity begins by saying that under President Clinton, who again was the candidate that Carville backed and really like launched his famous career, that there was a balanced budget. Again, that was an act of fiscal responsibility, but it occurred under a Democrat, never under a Republican. So I love the fact that Carville begins with this joke, right, that Fox News and others like Donald Trump have peddled, this idea that, you know, under Democratic administrations, we're being profligate, sending hundreds of millions of dollars for condoms to Hamas. Again, a debunked conspiracy theory. And obviously, Hannity doesn't like the fact that Carville's throwing that back in his face. But then Carville hits him with something more substantial, more substantive, and I would argue much more hurtful to Hannity.
Tens and hundreds of billions.
American all right, you went for 10 minutes.
All right,
okay.
Go ahead.
If he can find the money, great, give everybody $1,000. But I'll tell you this: more deficit has accumulated under Donald Trump than the other president in American history. But I'm glad that you're on the fiscal responsibility bandwagon. I'm glad you're on the bandwagon of Bill Clinton being able to balance the budget and bring unbelievable prosperity to America. But, and you're reading these polls, and I'm reading the polls saying the Democrats are 13 points up in the congressional generic, that Donald Trump has the lowest approval rating of any president at this point in his presidency in American history. So your viewers are getting one view, and I'm reading another view. So one of us is right and one of us is wrong. It's that simple.
The person wrong, of course, is Hannity himself. Again, this is Carville at his best. Okay, this is Carville when at peak performance, even in his senior years. This idea that he really focuses on the notion of the economy and that the economy is the singular most important factor in a successful campaign. And he's right. Donald Trump has no credibility with respect to the economy. Not when you look at the facts. Okay, again, $8 trillion approved on Trump's watch, the single greatest contribution in a 4-year period. So by conservative definitions, Trump was fiscally irresponsible. That is a fact that we should relentlessly hammer, number one. Number two, even prior to COVID, Trump racked up extraordinary deficits. He deficit spent prior to COVID, prior to the emergency, so he was fiscally irresponsible there. He added $2 trillion in tax cuts for the rich, the people who need it the least, and it did not pay for itself as Trump promised. So again, he lied there. And yes, as we've talked about, recent polling has indicated that even though the economy was always Trump's strong suit with respect to polling, because, he's, again, a mimetic businessman. He was a TV businessman. People have this perception of Trump as a competent businessman. He's actually underwater in terms of recent polling with economic management because people are pissed off that inflation is skyrocketing once again on his watch, and he promised to be able to end it in 24 hours. So he set himself up for failure there. And I love that Carville is so damn good about throwing these facts back in Hannity's face, again, with the fact that the last time that we had quote unquote conservative fiscal responsibility with a balanced budget, it was because of a Democrat, not a Republican.
Right. So let's just say I missed a couple. I think the Republican Party is against the minimum wage. I think the Republican Party stands for more tax cuts for people making over $400,000 a year. I think the Republican Party wants to get rid of a woman's right to choose. I think the Republican Party wants to destroy Medicaid. I think the Republican Party would like to get rid of Medicare if it possibly can. I think the Republican Party supports Vladimir Putin. I think the Republican Party is weak when it comes to communist China. So there are a lot of issues of which I have profound and deep disagreements with the Republican Party on. I must tell you that in all honesty.
And of course, this is in response to this idea that Carville, because he's a '90s liberal or a '90s Democrat, has more in common with the modern Republican Party than the so-called woke Democratic Party of today. Again, total bullshit. And I'm not saying that Carville is exactly like Bill Maher in this respect, but Bill Maher is also somebody who positions himself, well, I'm a '90s Democrat. Even Bill Maher will tell you, and I hate a lot of Bill Maher's takes, particularly when it comes to the culture war. I think he's much too caught up in that. But he will tell you that even today in 2025, he votes Democrat and has more in common politically with the Democratic Party because the Democratic Party, at least with respect to its politicians and elected officials, as far as Maher is concerned, is much saner and much more respectable and should be better trusted with power than the Republican Party. So again, Hannity's efforts at outreach here tend to fail. Here's another clip.
I don't hear Democrats saying, you know what, we ought not be spending the American people's money this way. What say you?
I see you got USAID up there. They
That's
spend
correct.
$41 billion. They spend $41 billion. The federal budget is $6 trillion. I did the math, Sean. It actually comes to something like 0.014%. So take the $41 billion, put it against the $6 trillion, and see what you've done when your president is responsible for more federal debt than any president in the history of the United States. So I'll spot you the $41 billion.
He's just...
Now we $5,998,000,000, whatever you got. Okay, I did the math on USAID.
He's again, this is Carville when he's at his best. That's why they call him the Raging Cajun. He's a smart ass. He's pretty well versed certainly on the macroeconomic data, and he likes going toe to toe with Republicans and having contentious conversations. And note that even Hannity has to laugh at it. I'll say this like a good sport because he just has no refutation of it. He's like, listen, let's say you're 100. Let's say you're not only right about USAID. Let's go further. Let's say that every penny of USAID funding is fraudulent, wasteful, abusive, waste, fraud, and abuse, right? That's bullshit. That's not true. But let's just grant you that. You still have gone a long way. You are still orders of magnitude away from being able to create that $2 trillion in cuts that Shadow President Elon Musk and Donald Trump promised. $1.5–2 trillion. They constantly move the goalposts. Even if you're 100% correct about USAID, you are orders of magnitude away. And then again, there's not just that failure, but again, as we've discussed, and as Carville throws in Hannity's face once again, Trump has been the most profligate president in the history of the United States. That is an objective fact, so they have no credibility on this topic whatsoever, and I love the fact that he throws it in their face. Here's another clip.
Immigration, they want lower energy prices, they want the economy fixed, and you're right, it's going to take a little bit of time. We have to get reconciliation passed. Democrats won't help with any of that. So it'll probably sometime in May, we'll begin to get the Trump economy in place.
Before he responds, I just want to remind you, even notice how Hannity himself is actually undermining Trump's campaign promises. Trump promised on day one the Trump economy would be in effect. Remember, starting on day one, we're going to cut costs. Inflation is too high. He's failed. That's why the polling for Trump on the economy right now is plunging. He's failed. Now Hannity's saying, well, it's probably going to be May. Like he's freaking like in sync or whatever. It's gonna be May. Like, what, really? Like, is this where we are? Just the tacit concession that Trump and Hannity and the entire MAGA movement lied their ass off during the 2024 campaign just to get your vote and then to screw you over once they had the vote, once they had the victory, knew that they didn't have to deliver. It's embarrassing. Here is Carville's response.
Do you know what year had the most domestic energy production in American history? I happen to know. 2024.
I have no idea.
Fact check. I do.
That statement is true.
Domestic energy.
But here's what you're missing.
So, again, I just love this. 2024, under President Biden, under Joe Biden, energy production has been higher than it ever was under Trump. So, again, they just lie their asses off by suggesting that Biden has somehow handicapped or kneecapped energy production in this country. There's a reason, actually, a lot of progressives were pissed off by President Biden because he did permit oil drilling and fracking. He tried to, reduce the number of permits granted in the future, right? But the backlog of permits, he was granting them out left, right, and center at a higher rate than even the Trump administration. Oil and fracking did very well under Joe Biden, even as he also simultaneously created the biggest investment in renewable energy in the history of civilization, not just here in the United States, but in any other country in terms of the Inflation Reduction Act. So his energy record, at least as far as progressives go, is a mixed bag. It's certainly better than any Republican counterpart, but even with respect to just domestic production, it was better under Biden than it was under Trump. And even Hannity concedes it.
I'm not looking at USAID. 41 billion out of 6 trillion. Put it on
that's your math. That's only one. That's 1% of what they're finding. I'm going to let it go, but I'll say this: one of the reasons we were immigration, they want lower energy.
There you have it. Again, masterclass performance by James Carville. This is Carville at his best. I'm curious. I think there's one more clip. Let me play this. There's one other clip here, actually. We'll let it go with this one. Again, where Carville attacks the Republican Party's priorities.
I see a lot of Democrats, do support their rights to play women's sports, and you're not addressing those key issues that are.
It's the key issue. What the High School Athletic Association decides who's eligible to play what sport is the key issue. We're going to continue to help people with health care, with Medicaid and Medicare, or the key issues that we're going to secure people's retirement security. The key issue is in this century, under Democratic presidents, 50 million jobs have been created and 1 million jobs under Republicans. I think most Democrats that I know want to create jobs, create opportunity for people, and create opportunity for young people. I don't know of anybody that's sitting there worrying about who plays in the high school track meet.
It's true. I mean, I'm sorry. It's just, listen, this is an issue that Republicans try to exploit because they perform well in culture war issues, knowing that in substantive government issues, their record sucks, right? And so they want to perpetuate this myth that the Democratic Party is obsessed with quote-unquote trans issues. Now, it's true that we recognize trans people, that they exist, that this is a valid cohort of people, but it also represents a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a minority. Like, this is not, these people are not a dominant cultural cohort. They need to be treated humanely, with respect. They need to be given affirmative care when and where appropriate, as determined by medical professionals. They have high rates of suicidality. We don't want to bully people who are already experiencing disproportionate levels of social ostracization. That does distinguish us from the Republican Party. That is true. But this idea that that's what we campaign on, that we don't care about job creation and lifting up the lower and middle classes, reducing the wealth gap in this country, helping out American workers, pro-labor, pro-union, anti-corporate policy, the fact that we're not concerned, this idea that we're not concerned with that, and all we care about is whether the green M&M wears high heels or flats, or whether, what the intricacies of what goes on in high school sports, that's not where we're focused. That's what Republicans tell other people that we're focused on. Unfortunately, they have been sinisterly persuasive in that regard, but just the substance isn't there. And Carville is right about that that's just a distraction, a cruel distraction that Republicans try to perpetuate to politically damage Democrats and to attack trans people. Again, it's been politically effective cruelty and bigotry at the highest level. But Carville is right to call it out. And again, just a masterclass performance by him. Again, otherwise a mixed bag. He's sometimes I agree with him, sometimes I don't. But him humiliating Sean Hannity, I'm all for that. And the fact that Hannity even conceded defeat on the 2024 energy production thing, like, oh, you're right. That's great stuff. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.